When you hear the phrase end times or apocalypse, be honest, where does your mind actually go?
Oh, it's always the same stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm betting it's not a quiet afternoon in the library reading a book. You're picturing the full Hollywood blockbuster treatment.
Right, the Roland Emmerich movie.
Asteroids slamming into the earth, zombies roaming the streets.
Elgar raining down.
Yeah, the sky rolling up like a scroll, maybe Nicolas Cage running around in a panic. It is always, always physical, planetary destruction.
It's the standard cultural default. I mean, we are just conditioned to think of the end of the age as this geological event, a cinematic finale to the globe itself where everything just goes boom.
Exactly. But today we are going on a deep dive that completely flips that script. We've got a stack of notes here based on a pretty dense theological commentary.
Very dense.
And it claims all those terrifying descriptions in Matthew 24, the wars, the falling stars, the earthquakes, they are not about the physical planet at all.
Not even a little bit.
Instead, this source argues they're a code. It's a symbolic description of a spiritual crisis, the internal state of humanity. So, our mission today is to decode that code for you. We're looking at a text that approaches the Bible not as a history book or a weather forecast,
Right.
but as a document with an internal sense.
And that is really the key phrase for this whole deep dive, internal sense. The material we're analyzing today argues that the end of the age isn't the world blowing up. It's the consummation or the natural conclusion of a specific era of the church.
Okay, so a spiritual era ending.
Exactly. It's about the loss of two very specific things. Good, which is defined here purely as love and charity, and truth, which is faith.
So if you're a listener who has ever rolled their eyes at a guy on a street corner with a "the end is nigh" sign.
Which we all have.
Right. But you've also wondered, hey, is there something deeper to this ancient language? Then stick around. Because according to the source, the apocalypse is happening, but it's happening inside the human mind.
It is a psychological and spiritual drama. It's not a disaster movie. And frankly, that makes it much more confronting.
Let's unpack this. We start in Matthew 24, verses 1 and 2. The scene is set with the disciples showing Jesus the temple buildings.
Yeah, they're essentially acting like tourists.
Exactly, admiring the masonry, saying, look at these massive stones. And Jesus turns to them and just drops this massive buzzkill. He says, do you not see all these things? Assuredly, I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down.
It's a really violent image. And historically, people point to the Romans destroying Jerusalem in 70 AD. But our source text insists we have to look past the physical bricks.
So what are we looking at?
In this analysis, the temple represents the divine humanity, the Lord, and by extension, the church itself.
Now, when we say the church in this context, are we talking about a specific denomination or like a building on Main Street?
No, and that's a crucial distinction. In this source, the church is a spiritual state. It's the collective presence of faith and love in humanity. It's the kingdom of God within people.
Okay.
So when the temple falls, it has nothing to do with architecture. The source explains that stones, the building blocks of the temple, correspond to truths, specifically truths of faith.
Okay, so think of it like a worldview constructed of ideas. The stones are the facts, the beliefs, the truths that hold your spiritual house together.
Precisely. If the stones are truths, then not one stone left upon another describes a state where every single truth of faith has been dismantled.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a total intellectual and spiritual collapse. It's predicting a time when the church, or the individual, no longer possesses any coherent spiritual truth. It is all thrown down.
Which is arguably scarier than a building falling down. It's the total collapse of meaning. Now, notice where this conversation happens. Verse 3 says, Jesus sat on the Mount of Olives. Is that just geography, or is there a code there too?
In this system of correspondences, geography is never accidental. It is always telling you about the internal state the characters are in. A mountain represents love, specifically divine celestial good.
Divine celestial good. That is a heavy term. Break that down for us.
It basically means the highest form of love, love to the Lord, and olives, or olive oil, symbolize the good of charity.
So picture the scene. You have Jesus, who represents divine truth,
Right.
sitting on the Mount of Olives, which represents divine love. The source is telling us you can only really understand the destruction of truth if you are viewing it from a vantage point of love.
That sets the stage perfectly. You need to be standing on the foundation of love to even see that the truth has been destroyed. So, looking down from that high ground of love, They start listing the signs of this spiritual collapse.
And this is where we get the famous phrase, wars and rumors of wars.
This is where the reinterpretation gets really practical. We usually think of tanks, treaties, geopolitical borders. But the source reframes war as spiritual combat.
So a war is an internal conflict.
It's the struggle and debate between truths and falsities. It can be internal within a single person or external between different doctrines. But fundamentally, it's a clash of ideas and loves.
It's that feeling when what you believe is under attack, or when you're fighting to hold on to a truth against a lie.
Exactly.
And rumors of wars, that always sounded like, I don't know, fake news or anxiety to me.
You're actually really close. Rumors here represent the perception of those conflicts. It's that internal anxiety.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's the feeling of unease when your understanding of the world is being challenged, but you don't quite know what's true anymore. It is the mental noise of conflict.
Then the text scales it up. Nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. If we aren't talking about geopolitics, what are nations and kingdoms in this code?
This is one of the Rosetta Stones of this source material. In the internal sense, nation corresponds to good, or in the opposite negative sense, evil. It relates to the will, your emotions, your loves, your desires.
Okay, let me make sure I have this. Nation equals the heart or the will.
Correct. And kingdom corresponds to truth, or in the opposite sense, falsity. It relates to the intellect or the understanding.
So kingdom equals the head or the mind.
You've got it. So nation against nation isn't about borders on a map. It symbolizes the internal clash of evils against evils.
Like your heart fighting itself.
Right. It's describing a state of emotional chaos, a kind of madness where hellish loves are fighting one another.
Yeah.
And kingdom against kingdom is falsity, fighting falsity.
It paints a picture of total incoherence. Your heart is at war with itself, and your head is at war with itself. It's not just a disagreement, it's a civil war inside the human spirit.
Exactly. It's total disorder. And that leads directly to the disasters, famines, pestilences, earthquakes.
Again, staples of the disaster movie genre. But in a spiritual crisis, what is a famine? Is it just being hungry?
Well, think about what sustains a spiritual life. Truth and goodness are described as food and drink throughout the Bible. So a famine isn't a lack of bread. It is a lack of knowledge.
Spiritual starvation.
Yes, it's a state where the desire for good is absent because you don't even know what good looks like anymore. You are starving for meaning.
And pestilence. That sounds like a physical plague.
It's an infestation. The source defines it as the infection of good by falsities.
Like a virus.
Think of it exactly like a spiritual virus. You might have a good intention, say you want to help someone, but a false idea infects it. Maybe a cynical belief that everyone is selfish anyway, and suddenly that good intention just rots away. It's the dying off of spiritual health.
That makes so much sense. And finally, the earthquake.
In this symbology, the earth or land represents the church, the ground we stand on. So an earthquake is a fundamental shaking or alteration of the state of the church.
The foundation cracking.
Right. The very axioms of belief are shifting and breaking apart. The ground isn't solid anymore.
So we have starvation, infection, and the ground breaking apart, and it's all happening in the human psyche. But then the text uses a very curious word for all this. It calls them sorrows. And the notes here say there's a linguistic clue in the Greek.
Yes. The Greek word often translated as sorrows is odin. It literally refers to labor pains, childbirth.
Oh, that changes the flavor completely. A war is destructive, but childbirth is productive, even if it's incredibly painful.
That is the exact nuance. The source links this to spiritual birth, or regeneration. This chaos, this intense conflict between truth and falsity is actually the painful struggle required to bring forth a new spiritual state.
So they're growing pains.
For the new church or the new spiritual state trying to be born, yes. But for the old state that is dying, it just feels like sheer misery.
And that misery breeds betrayal. Verse 10 says, many will be offended, will critique one another, and will hate one another. And then we get to what seems to be the core cause of the whole apocalypse. Because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold.
This is the pivot point. If you take one thing away from this deep dive, this is it. In this analysis, the end of the age isn't defined by the calendar or by nuclear clocks. It is defined by the temperature of the human heart.
Love growing cold. That hits hard.
When charity, which the source defines strictly as kindness and love toward the neighbor, dies out, the church is effectively dead.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if the cathedrals are full or the rituals are absolutely perfect. If the love is cold, The age is over.
It's interesting that it links lawlessness to cold love. Usually we think of lawlessness as breaking rules, like speeding or robbing a bank. But here, the law seems to be love itself.
Exactly. The divine law is love. So to be without love is to be lawless. And into that cold vacuum steps the false prophets.
Who are they? Are these the cult leaders?
They can be. But more abstractly, the source defines false prophets as false doctrines. Specifically, teachings that claim faith alone saves you, without the need for a good life or charity.
So any teaching that says, hey, it doesn't matter how you treat people as long as you believe the right list of facts.
Right. That separates belief from action, which this text argues is a fatal error. It teaches that you can have a relationship with God without having love for your neighbor. And this separation paves the way for the most mysterious, heavy metal-sounding phrase in the Bible, the abomination of desolation.
When you see the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place, it sounds terrifying. What is it? A statue? A demon?
The source is brutally direct here. The abomination of desolation is self-love.
Just narcissism?
Narcissism on a cosmic scale. Self-love and the love of the world taking the place where God should be. When a text says standing in the holy place, it means that selfish lusts and ego have occupied the internal, holy parts of a person's mind.
They've displaced genuine love.
They have.
So the abomination is when the ego sets itself up as the idol in the temple of the mind.
Correct. And it causes desolation because self-love eventually destroys everything around it. It consumes, it doesn't create, it leaves the spiritual landscape desolate.
That is startlingly relevant today. Okay, so the temple is crumbling, love is cold, and the ego is on the throne. The text then shifts to survival instructions. Jesus tells them to flee to the mountains. Now, earlier you said the mountain is love.
Yes. So the instruction isn't geography, it's psychology. When you see this spiritual collapse happening, when you see the culture turning cold and narcissistic, run toward a state of love and charity.
Okay.
Get away from the self-love of the collapsing the corrupted church state, and get to the high ground of love.
And then we get these very specific, almost odd warnings. Let him who is on the housetop not go down to take anything out of his house.
This is a favorite insight of mine from this material. The housetop represents a state of high internal good. You're in a place of charity, peace, and connection. You're seeing things from a higher perspective.
You're vibrating high, as they say.
Right. Going down to take something from the house represents looking back or regressing from that high state of love back down into lower doctrinal debates or falsities.
So if I can translate this to the modern day, if you are in a place of love and peace, don't dive into the comment section to argue theology.
Ideally, yes. It's a warning against spiritual regression. Once you are up there, stay up there. Don't go down to rummage through the lower things. You don't need the external validation if you have the internal good.
That is brilliant.
The same goes for the person in the field. Don't turn back for your clothes.
Field usually implies work, right?
The field represents the good of charity, the actual practice of loving your neighbor. Clothes represent external truths or forms. So don't abandon the work of love just to go grab your external identity or your arguments.
The work is more important than the outfit, so to speak.
Exactly.
Then we hit a verse that has always sounded harsh to me. Woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days. I mean, why pick on mothers?
It does sound harsh physically, but spiritually, it's about the difficulty of the task. The source says, pregnant refers to those who have conceived good within their understanding. They have a new idea of how to be a better person. They're carrying a new spiritual truth.
And nursing.
Those who are in the process of implanting and feeding that good into their actual lives, they're nurturing this new state.
So why the woe?
Because of the environment. The tragedy of the end times, this loveless, cynical era, is that it is incredibly difficult to nurture new spiritual life.
Yeah, that makes sense.
When the prevailing culture is cold and self-obsessed, trying to give birth to innocence and goodness is dangerous. It's a hostile environment for a tender new faith.
It's hard to be good in a bad world. You feel completely vulnerable. And that connects to the prayer, pray that your flight may not be in winter or on the Sabbath.
Again, codes. Winter is a state of coldness, no love, no charity. The Sabbath here is used in a negative sense to mean a state of mere external piety.
Just going through the motions.
Right, going through the motions of ritual without any internal life.
So the prayer is, don't let yourself get caught in a state of lovelessness or empty ritual when the crisis hits.
You need to be awake and warm, so to speak. If the crisis comes and you have no love winter or only fake holiness negative Sabbath, you just won't make it.
Okay, Moving to the climax. The text warns about people shouting, "Look, here is the Christ," or "There he is," in the desert or inner rooms.
The source warns, don't fall for it. The desert corresponds to a devastated state of the church where there is no truth. Don't look for truth where there is no life. The inner rooms or secret chambers correspond to the hidden evil will.
Basically, don't trust a truth that comes from a corrupt, hidden intention. So how does the real truth appear? The text uses the image of lightning. For as the lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be.
This is beautiful symbolism. Lightning represents divine truth or illumination. But look at the direction, east to west.
Does that matter?
In this ancient symbology, east, where the sun rises, represents the Lord and divine love. West represents the external or natural world. So the true coming isn't the guy walking around shaking hands.
Right.
It is an internal illumination that flows instantly from divine love down into your understanding.
It's a flash of insight.
It's undeniable. You don't need someone to point and say, "Lo, here," because it lights up your whole mind. It's self-evidencing. When you see the truth from love, it's like a lightning strike in a dark sky.
I love that. But then, right after that beautiful flash, we get a very gritty, almost gross image. For wherever the carcass is, there the eagles will be gathered together.
It is gritty. The carcass is the dead church. Spiritually dead because the life, good, and love has gone out of it. It's just a shell.
And the eagles, usually eagles are noble, symbols of freedom.
Not here. In this specific context, the eagles represent false reasonings. Sharp-eyed, sophisticated, cynical arguments that come from self-intelligence. They gather around the dead religion to feast on it.
That is a powerful image. Intellectuals tearing apart a dead system, using the dead texts to confirm their own cynicism.
It's a picture of the end of a cycle. The life is gone, and the critics are just picking the bones clean. And this leads to the cosmic collapse. The sun darkens, the moon stops giving light, the stars fall.
And based on everything we've said, I'm assuming we aren't talking about astrophysics.
Correct. If the end is the loss of love and faith, the symbols follow suit. The sun is love. It's darkened, extinguished. The moon is faith. It reflects the sun, so if there's no love, there's no faith. It gives no light.
And the stars?
Stars are the knowledges of good and truth. They are your navigation points in the dark. Falling stars means these knowledges are lost or no longer valued. People literally lose their spiritual map. The sky is just empty.
But then, in this total darkness, the sign of the Son of Man appears, and he comes on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory.
This is the finale. And the source makes a crucial distinction here that might really surprise some listeners. It interprets clouds as the literal sense of the word. The Bible text itself.
Clouds are the text.
Think about it. Clouds veil the light, but they also carry the water. The literal stories cover the deeper meaning, but the power and glory refers to the internal or spiritual sense hidden inside.
So the second coming described here isn't a physical descent on a water vapor cloud.
According to this text, no. It is the opening of the internal spiritual meaning within the literal text of the scripture. It is an intellectual and spiritual revelation. It's the moment the clouds, the text open up, and you see the glory, the deeper meaning inside.
So in a way, what we're doing right now, uncovering this deeper meaning, is part of that event.
That is exactly what the source implies. The coming is the restoration of understanding. It's the moment the Bible stops being a history book and starts being a mirror for the soul.
And the trumpet sound.
Evangelization, spreading this new spiritual truth.
And the gathering of the elect. That always sounds a bit exclusive.
The source clarifies that the elect aren't a VIP club or a specific denomination. They are simply those who live a life of charity and faith, the remains of the good people. The new church is formed by gathering these people, those who have some good left in them, from the four winds, meaning from all states of life and all corners of the world.
This is a massive shift in perspective. We've gone from a disaster movie to a psychological roadmap.
It really reframes the whole concept of the apocalypse. Instead of the end of the world, it's a transition of eras. It's the death of a loveless religious state, the carcass, and the birth of a new spiritual understanding, the lightning.
It definitely makes you think about what really matters. If this source is right, the most critical survival tool isn't a bunker or a stockpile of canned food, it's charity. It's keeping that love warm when everything else around you is freezing over.
And maintaining that high state. Staying on the housetop. It's about not letting the chaos of the wars and rumors drag you down into hatred or cynicism. It's about preserving your internal state regardless of the external chaos.
Which brings us to a final thought for you, our listeners, to chew on. I cannot get that image of the eagles and the carcass out of my head. A dead system surrounded by sharp, cynical arguments feasting on it.
It is a haunting image, but a really necessary warning.
So here's the question for you to explore on your own. If the carcass is a worldview void of empathy and love, and the eagles are the cynical arguments that surround it, where do we see that dynamic playing out in our world today? And more importantly, are we feeding the eagles or are we trying to flee to the mountains?
That is the question.
Thanks for diving deep with us today.
It was a pleasure.
See you next time.